Welcome to the 24th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival, one of the world's largest and oldest Jewish cultural arts events. My name is Ruben Rosari. I'm a film critic for Miami Art Scene. It gives me so much pleasure that you could join us for this special virtual screening of Eytan Fox's Sublet, which is screening as part of this year's lineup. I'm sure at this moment you've just finished watching the film and you're still riding the emotional high of this touching and endearing film. Before I introduce my guests, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of the festival's members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, all of you film lovers, and especially, here we go. Let's see. Our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout all these years. I'm truly excited to be moderating this virtual conversation with the film's director and co-screenwriter, Mr. Eytan Fox, and its a younger star, the radiant and very talented Niv Nissim. Hello, gentlemen. Before we get right to it, it's time to do my best James Lipton impression and tell you a little bit about our guests for our audiences who have just seen Sublet. Born in New York City, Eytan Fox immigrated to Jerusalem at age 2. He studied at Tel Aviv University School of Film and Television. In 2002, he rocked the international movie scene with his drama Josie and Jagger, a love story between two young Jewish military men who were completing their mandatory national service. Israeli-Palestinian tensions would figure prominently in later films, such as Walk on Water, which is the first time I saw an Eytan Fox film on the screen in Berlin, and The Bubble, which I saw when it screened in Toronto. So in my past as a festival programmer, you've been kind of custom presence. Your films, Eytan, have been released theatrically in over 30 countries and won over 24 awards. He is not only a filmmaker I admire, but I'm proud to call him my friend. I am overjoyed to introduce you to Mr. Eytan Fox. Hello, Eytan.
Hello. Hello. It's nice to see you again, and it's nice to be here with your audience. I'm sorry that me and Niv cannot be there in person. If not for COVID, we'd make it our business to come see you guys and spend time with you. And yeah, so next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hello, Eytan. So wonderful you can join us. Niv was born in Tel Aviv and raised in Ramat HaSharon. After graduating from the Nisav Nativ acting studio, he joined the Beit Lessing Theater. Is that still the case, Mr. Nissim? Excellent. Sublet marks his screen debut, people. And let me tell you, it feels to me like learning to swim by being thrown off the deep end as this is your first film. I don't think I'm alone in saying what a remarkable debut your performance is. Thank you for bringing Tomer into our lives. So I'm going to get right to it. First question is from Mr. Eytan Fox. What really resonated with me when I saw Sublet as part of New Fest last year is that it explores this theme of a traveler taking stock of their life while visiting another country. It's a subgenre of films. Do you realize the film that I saw that I reminded me when I first saw and that I saw recently to prepare for this panel? It's actually something maybe you wouldn't think about when you think of Sublet, but what I kept thinking about, it kept nagging me when I first saw it. And then, yes, the light bulb came on, was David Lean's Summertime, 1955 film with Katharine Hepburn and Rosanna Brazzi, where Katharine plays a Ohio woman who takes all her savings and then travels to Venice and then meets and falls in love with this man who turns out to be married. A wonderful film. Could you tell us about how the idea of a film about a Jewish American traveling to Israel came about?
Yes. First of all, I'm happy you reminded me of the film. I wasn't thinking of it when I made Sublet, but it's a nice film to think of.
Yeah.
When you talk about Sublet and just in general. Well, I'll tell you, I'm originally from, I was born in New York. And if you play what if I stayed in America, I'd be a 50-something American Jew, maybe a writer for the New York Times, who decides to go to Israel, perhaps reconnect with his Jewish roots. And we have Michael is a person who is Jewish, but is kind of, I think, conflicted with his Judaism, his Jewish father, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and it's an interesting way to talk about a place, to talk about Israel and Tel Aviv that I love so dearly. To have someone who's an outsider and comes to the place you're dealing with and that you love and kind of looks at it from foreign eyes. And so you get a chance to think about and to process what you think and feel about a place, and to say that to the world, and especially when you introduce or make him meet a person like Tomer, Niv Nissim, who is the new Tel Aviv, the new world, the new Tel Aviv, and bringing them together, hopefully says something about the city, says something about these two people, the differences between them, the way they're actually not that different, and so on.
In terms of movie references, the character of Michael reminded me of a character that you might be familiar with. There's a character that William Hurt played in The Accidental Tourist, who, like Michael, is a travel writer. Which brings me to another thing the two films have in common is that how they explore very affectingly how we internalize and process grief. I'm really glad that you chose not to reveal the tragedy in Michael's life until after the halfway point in the film. So it all feels like it unfolds organically. And I've read in prior interviews that you were inspired by a friend who went through a similar loss in his life with his partner. Could you talk about the process leading up to the treatment stage and how you integrated this real life account into the work, into the material?
Yeah. Ruben, first of all, thank you for complimenting us for not exposing that backstory and that tragedy that the protagonist has gone through in the beginning of the film. I think Niv knows this, that we had a big dilemma. There were versions of the script that actually started with so-called flashback to that traumatic experience that Michael, the protagonist, has gone through, losing his baby at birth. We had that. We had a version where the film started that way.
Right.
And after a lot of deliberation, we decided to have this very slow disclosure that leads to him actually sharing this story, dealing with it, to some extent processing it with the character of Tomer, the Israeli friend that he meets, and Tomer's mother. So yes, it is based on a sad story, a tragic story of a dear friend of mine. Yaniv and his husband decided to become parents, and they found a wonderful surrogate mother in the States. It's still illegal to have surrogacy in Israel for gay parents, which makes it, of course, much more complicated, much more expensive. So Yaniv and Kfir went back and forth to the States to meet the surrogate mother. Eventually, we were all there with them when they flew over to witness their baby's birth. We were waiting for them to call and to be happy together and celebrate together and cry together and whatever. And they called to say that there was a tragedy and the baby died at birth. So, that was a very traumatic experience for them, of course, but for all their friends that were with them and going through this thing together. And all the emotions that came up, that surfaced, for me personally, was something that I started thinking about and processing, that how am I going to put that into a film, and how does that connect to my life, and what do I do with it? And that's more or less what started the process.
Okay. Let's talk about another aspect that stands out in Sublet. It's location. We become very familiar with that part of the street where Tomer's apartment is located, especially that view from the balcony. It's something that the film keeps returning to. let's see, how early on did location scouting begin, and did something change in the process from the way you had originally envisioned it in terms of the setting?
Well, I want to ask Niv to talk about that. I'll tell you why, because okay, Niv, explain why we chose that neighborhood and how you're connected to that neighborhood and so on.
So the neighborhood is it's called Florentine, which maybe it sounds familiar to you because Eytan had a very famous TV series in the 90s called Florentine about this neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah, and Florentine, it's like the neighborhood. It's like kind of you can say it's the Brooklyn of Tel Aviv, because everybody went, all the young people and the artists, moved there because it's less expensive, but it's still in the city and stuff. So when I moved to Tel Aviv, I lived in Florentine in 2 different apartments, 3. My boyfriend lived there in, I think, 7 apartments, but all of them in Florentine. It's like it's like the neighborhood for young people. And when I think that when Eytan was thinking about, where could Michael be subletting his apartment in Tel Aviv, so the perfect location is Florentine, because it's like this young vibes neighborhood that he can write about, like the real Tel Aviv that he wants to find, and he finds it in a nice but trashy apartment of like a young boy who's 25 and a student, and needs to crash at other people's to be able to have this apartment. So that's why this location was picked. And it's funny because everybody that watches the movie thinks that the apartment is an actual apartment in Florentine and the view is the actual view. But if you knew how many locations, and it's amazing because the art and the editing made it that way. But I think there are, Eytan, correct me if I'm wrong, to the apartment only and the view from the apartment and the balcony and everything, maybe 8 different locations in Israel.
The magic of cinema. No,
the
listen.
magic of cinema. It's crazy.
For you, it's your first movie, so I'm sure this is like real magic. But I have to tell you the truth. Also for me, and this is like my 7th feature film, I still, every time that this works, that all these things come together, the apartments in the studio, the porch or whatever is someplace else, the view from the window is something else. I can't believe this is all coming together and working. It is the magic of cinema.
It's pretty seamless.
Yeah.
It all feels like one unit.
Nobody believed me. I am telling you, nobody believed me when I told them, because they didn't know even to ask that. They didn't know, because in their eyes it's like a location, one location. But it was amazing.
Are we, Ruben? Are we ruining the experience from your? Do you think that when people know all these things, like the experience maybe is kind of, I don't know, ruined? I don't think ruined, but no, yeah.
I don't think so. Remember, the people who are watching this have already seen the film, so we didn't ruin their first experience. There's like a behind the scenes you watch
I love
after.
trivia. I love trivia and Easter eggs after watching a film or a series, and I love it. It's fun.
Right. So now that I have you here, Niv, let me ask you something. In terms of when you first read the script for the film, what stood out to you about Tomer's personality? Because I'm sensing that you and Tomer are pretty different people, 2 different people, right?
Yeah. Actually, me and Tomer are, you can say that we could be friends because we are interested in, maybe not the same, but similar stuff. And we are the same age, and he's a cinema student, and we filmed the film when I was an acting student, and we were the same age. But I am Tomer is a very different person from me. Tomer is kind of lost in the world, and he is sad, kind of sad, but doesn't know where the sadness is coming from, and he has to cover his life with everything he sees, to cover his emotions and to make a shield for him. And I'm the exact opposite, because I'm living a very exposed life. I'm a monogamist. I have, I'm happy. Not to say that Tomer is like, but yeah. And but me and Tomer, I think I could have a really good talk with Tomer and be a friend for him. I think about it a lot, but we are not the same. No.
What was the most challenging part of playing him?
So I think everything was first for me, because it's the first film I did. It's the first, I didn't do any TV series before or anything. So it was like everything was first. From learning the script in English, which is not my first language,
Right.
to pronounce the words so it'll be good enough and hearable, and to be, I'm an actor. I was in acting school, and everything in acting school is like a stage acting. It's big. Eytan had to tell me, okay, now less, or now a bit more, or now he had to fine tune me, so it'll be good. And I think it took me like a couple of days until I found my the little secrets. And John was a great teacher for me, to watch him from the side act in front of camera, and how to behave with the camera, and how to but I think Eytan and I worked a lot of time before we actually filmed, because it was I think 2 months before we started filming I got the part, or 1 month. So, and we worked very hard. Even before I got the part, Eytan, he helped me with the auditions and stuff. So yeah.
Wonderful.
But everything was like first for me in this crazy fun experience.
Yeah. I want to go back to Michael, the character of Michael Eytan, as someone who, like myself, is a journalist. I'm curious as to how, when your screenwriting partner, Itai Segal, settled on Michael being a travel columnist for the New York Times. It's a pretty tall order, because it's an iconic paper. You're basically conveying that he's very high up in stature in terms of the totem pole of the journalistic world. And I think John Benjamin Hickey sells the part quite convincingly. So when do you, at what point do you think, okay, let's make this character a travel columnist?
So first of all, my partner Itai Segal, my co-writer, is a journalist himself for Israel's biggest news. Yeah, he's a journalist for Israel's biggest newspaper called Yediot Acharonot, and so that was a very kind of natural choice for him, especially. Then I thought the New York Times was very much the character. And Dejan being this very wonderful, sophisticated theater actor, not only theater, but very, on Broadway, Tony Award winning, and so on. I thought that would be very much him, from this prestigious newspaper, writing about, countries and cities around the world, being very interested in things that were happening around the world, in places, and discovering new places, discovering new people. So yeah, so that somehow everything made sense. All those things coming together. And John, of course, working with John Benjamin Hickey was such a pleasure for both Niv and myself. He was everything I expected and much more. So yeah.
Yeah. Sublet also represents a couple of firsts for you, Eytan. It's not only the first film that you shot predominantly in English, but it's also the first time I've seen you depict elements of the horror genre, even though in this film, it's in the film with the context of the film within the film. In Tomer's work, in terms of Niv being an aspiring filmmaker, how did you decide to make him an enthusiast of the horror genre? Because it does play a prominent role in the film. So yeah, I'm curious to hear about how you guys decided to make Niv not just a film student, but one who's very interested in pursuing horror.
So I wanted him, because I am in many ways between these two characters, the older and younger. The older artist, Michael is an artist in his own way. He's a writer for the New York Times. He also published a book, a novel in the past. Hopefully we'll publish or write another one in the future. But so I wanted to juxtapose me and my world with someone else, and supposedly similar, because he's gay, he's Tel Avivian, he's a filmmaker, but so different than me. So different. I was, representing the new, the world of young people in Tel Aviv, young filmmakers or film audiences who really are into all these genre films that I know nothing about and don't understand and therefore don't like. But I was working with a lot of people, young people, including Niv, of course, that were helping me understand the world of this young person. And I had to watch some very interesting and out there.
Great tell. What do you watch for research?
If you think I remember the names of these films, well, okay. So what did I see? Thing called Hereditary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it has a lot of fans. I'm not a fan of it, but I know it has a lot of fans.
No, but I could have. What was interesting is I could appreciate what was better and what was worse, and thought I could really actually get into the genre. But yeah, so I brought on this young film director who helped me with the actual horror film. So yeah, it was fun to, maybe I'll make a horror film one day.
Right, that was my next question. I mean, that's because in Walk on Water you venture a little bit in the espionage genre because of the Mossad aspect of the film, but you haven't really returned to anything like genre until that aspect in Sublet. So I'm wondering if that's it now that kind of like gave you an appetite to try something different in the future project.
Maybe. I'm actually developing a espionage TV show. So
there you go.
So yeah. So I am going back to Walk on Water to some extent. But I had I was experiencing different genres, like Cupcakes is a romantic comedy.
Right.
So, but you're right. As years go by, I just want it to be very simple drama between two people, their relationship, their families. That's more me and what I care about.
Sure. Niv, anything you care to add about Tomer and his interest in horror?
So I think that as Eytan said, he tried to find the most far art in the cinema realm from him, and he found it in horror, and I could relate because I love horror films, and I love sci-fi movies. Eytan knows that because we talked about it a lot when we talked about the character, and but I don't have anything specific to add.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about the supporting characters in Sublet, two in particular that stand out for me, as Tomer's friend Daria, played by Lihi Kornowski, and the character's mother, Malka, played by Mickey Kam. I guess we can start with you, Eytan. Could you talk about how these characters came about in the writing process and how they help you explore the themes of the film?
Reaching one's mother is in a film definitely in life, is a very important moment. I mean, communicating with your mother, being helped by her, which is what happens here in the big scene between Malka, Tomer's mother, Tomer and Michael.
That's a great scene.
Yeah, and Nikki Kam is like one of the mothers of Israeli cinema, television, theater. So for me and for Niv, it was such a pleasure and an honor even to work with her, because she is someone that I've been seeing in theater and television, film for many, many, many years, wanting to work with her, never really finding the right opportunity, and this opportunity came with Sublet. So that was a wonderful experience. And Lee, and maybe Niv and Lee became close friends, so maybe Niv can tell us something about Lee. But I do know that a show that Lee stars in now is actually shown in America. Maybe it's called Losing Alice, and it's a show.
Rings a bell.
What? Yeah, it's a new show.
It rings a bell.
Yeah, on Apple or Amazon.
Apple TV. Yeah.
Apple TV.
Yeah. So Niv, what can you say about our lovely Lihi Koronovsky, Daria?
So I think we made when I got the part, so we made like auditions for the character of Daria, and there were amazing girls. But when I did it with Lihi, I think something clicked between us, but everybody in the room kind of felt it. So when I was asked what I think about the girls, it was kind of immediate for me to say that I think that Lee needs to do the part, and that's what happened, because Lee has this energy. She enters into a room and she conquers everyone. It's magic. She can be late for shooting day and I'm pissed at her, and then after 5 minutes we are like hugging, and she has this I don't know, conquering energy in the best way there is, and we had so much fun filming together, and we have a lot of mutual friends, and it was very, very fun, and I learned from her because she has a lot of, she did stuff before, and it was nice to hear from her and to get tips from her, and to have someone that I can ask her questions about, even not about acting, even about like, so what I'm doing right now, when I'm waiting to film, because it was the first time for me. So it was very, very good to have someone that I could talk to and really connect with. And we are friends till today, yeah, of course.
Wonderful. Now, this is something I really want to talk about. Of the subjects that speak to me in Sublet, the one that hits home the most to me is the vast generational divide between gay men of different generations. You seem to have a hopeful answer in the end to the question that is common ground possible between these different generations. I'm actually myself a little less optimistic than Sublet is. Can you talk about, Eytan, your depiction of the ways Michael and Tomer do not see eye to eye, and how this reflects that generational conflict that helps drive the narrative in Sublet?
I was trying to explore myself, of course, and trying to understand who I was as a 50-something-year-old man, Israeli, half American, if you may, gay man at this age, married but with no children. And one of the ways to do that is to put someone opposite me, or the character representing me, which is supposedly completely different, or the opposite. But he's not really, because he's Jewish, okay, and he's gay, and he's an artist or a filmmaker.
Right.
But to examine the differences and similarities, and I think there's on the surface of things, it's so different. But when you dig deeper, you realize that there are a lot of similarities, and these people, each one of them in his way, wants a relationship and wants love, and family is important to him. Yes. So I think there are supposedly a lot of differences, and there are differences, but there's a lot of similarities as well, and they find common ground, and they find a place to just love each other.
Yeah. Niv, anything you care to add about that particular aspect of the friendship that develops between the characters?
I think that it was when I first read the script, I was very moved because I've never had, as a young boy, and as a gay teenager, because I was in the closet when I was younger.
Mhm.
I never had, someone to talk to about those stuff. And in that part, I can relate to Tomer because he finds someone that he is different than him, but the difference between them is that's the reason I think for him, for Tomer, that he could connect with him in that, very, very emotional level, because they are different and they have this thing in common, their sexuality and craving, and they found a place to be friends, and they found a place to be lovers, and they found a place to be family, as a father, as a son. Sometimes Tomer felt like the father for Michael, for some scenes, and that's why that's why they connected in that deep level, because they are different. So yeah.
Yeah. You bring up something that that I think a lot about in recent years, is the fact that especially in American films, people just stop having sex. You don't see people having sex in films anymore, especially in the U.S. And I'm really happy that you introduced Eytan, this character of Tomer, who's so free and so sexual in nature, and so unapologetically so. And I'm wondering if you've also noticed this thing, and it bugs me because I remember when I grew up, sex was like, it was it was part of the films that you saw, and it's not there anymore. Have you guys noticed this? Because it really bugs me, it really does, and I'm glad that it's there in Sublet in a way that doesn't that doesn't feel like loss, but an expression of love. You know what I mean? It's really interesting the way you depict sexuality in the film, but it seems more like an anomaly these days.
Well, you might be able to talk about that more than us. I mean, I don't completely feel that. Definitely not about television. You
Not television. I'm talking
television.
about film, theatrical releases.
Yeah. Okay, film. Yeah, that might be the case, but and specifically about Sublet and that sex scene, that was again a big question, and I was going back and forth with, should I have them actually making love in the physical meaning of the word, or should I just have it, leave it with just a very emotional connection? And I really was thinking a lot about it. And at some point I said, no, this is part of a relationship. The sexual, physical aspects of a relationship should be explored and should be dealt with and can be part of a relationship. Doesn't mean that they change everything once they happen and once they come in. Mm-hmm. And Frédéric Boyer, who's a friend of mine who runs the Tribeca Film Festival, where Sublet had its world premiere. When he saw the film, one of the wonderful things he told me was, listen, what I loved about this film is the fact that we do have this sex scene between these two men, but it's not as though that changes everything. And suddenly everything that happened up to that point It's supposedly erased, and now we're only, you know, sexual, or we're only lovers. No, all the elements are there, or connect to that sexual moment. They're, as Niv said, they're friends, they're father and son, son and father. They become family to some extent, and they have this sexual lovemaking experience, which fits in.
Niv, let's talk about, as I said, Tomer is a character for whom, you know, uses sex both to express himself and maybe wall himself off emotionally from the world. Can you talk about that? How you actually approach that aspect of the character?
So if you noticed when Tomer you know, when he called the guy on Atraf, on the Israeli grinder, so when they met and when they started to, you know, do stuff, they didn't kiss in the mouth at all, and when it was close to it, Tomer was like went to do another stuff.
Yeah.
And he didn't kiss. You've never, and you heard him say that when they were in the beach, they were talking about the power of the kiss, and you know, don't you miss it, like that kiss, and we didn't see Tomer kisses that guy, and I think that's the thing with Tomer and his sexuality. He covers himself with that sexuality person. He can do stuff with his body, but when it becomes really intimate, and for me also, a kiss is a bit more intimate than everything else. So he doesn't let people very close to that. When it happened with Michael, it was because they had this experience together, and he kind of, you know, he loves him. He loves him as this is the dog from the movie.
Look at that!
Yeah, it's my dog.
Wonderful.
Can we see the star of the film? Hello.
There he is. Oh, how beautiful. He is lovely.
So yeah, so he got to be intimate with Michael and not with anyone else because he felt comfortable with him, and yeah. But that's the thing with Tomer. He's not an intimate guy. He's more sensual, sexual behavior comes from the you know, maybe lack of ביטחון עצמי, Eytan.
Self-esteem, confidence,
confidence, and in life.
You know, it's interesting. I'm hearing you speak, Niv. I tried, Ruben, to be very, when I explored the world of young people nowadays, I was trying to come to this as less, and not judgmental. I didn't want to be judgmental, although I knew I was entering this experience kind of judgmental about their world and how they run things. But one of the things, I was trying not to be judgmental, but found it, unsettling, I think, to some extent. The fact that a lot of the young people, and Niv is actually not a great example of that, but a lot of these people do have this thing where there's a split between emotions and love and their body and sex. They're like supposedly two different things. So we have all these dating apps and whatever grinders of different sorts and kinds. And you meet people there, and like Michael says, you order in love or sex like you order in a pizza. And then there's relationships. Some of them platonic, some of them become more important and more romantic. But there's a tendency or this pattern of splitting, between love and sex. And so I wanted, as Niv says, to show Tomer being that way. And by the end of the film, and with the help of Michael and what happens between them, the intimacy, the real intimacy that develops between them, enables Tomer to connect between love and sex. or intimacy and sex. And that was, I think, a big accomplishment that the film offers Tomer.
Right. And going back to that sex scene, I think it's emblematic of the rest of the film in the way that you're able to balance the lighter and the more serious aspects. And I think that's one of the strengths of Sublet is in terms of the tonal balance, in terms of Goldilocks. It's not too hot and it's not too cold. It's just right. And wondering in the development stages, if you thought about making it either more serious or more or lighter, and how do you come about establishing that balance?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's always a challenge, and with my films, I've always tried to kind of balance that out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think life has very serious elements to it, and maybe sometimes depressing. Like sometimes they do look like Dardenne brothers film, or for that matter, a Kieślowski film. But sometimes they do look or feel like a wonderful American romantic comedy, or an episode of Girls, or so for me personally, trying to probably I have in my soul both sides, and they're both important to me. Also, as far as film goes, I used to be a big Bergman person and a Kieślowski person, and on the other hand, my favorite film is Singing in the Rain. So how do you bring those things together and represent your inner self, which has all these elements together, And there's just, in Israel also, and definitely in Europe, sometimes it's either or, either you're making this very serious, metaphorically black and white film, art house film, or you're doing schlock for that matter. And of course, that's a dichotomy, which is wrong.
No, I agree.
Life and film should not always combine high and low, serious and funny, and so that's what Sublet was trying to do.
Yeah, very well. I thought. Of course, I couldn't let the opportunity pass by to ask both of you about how about the pandemic in Israel and how COVID-19 is affecting you guys, and both in your lives and the rollout of the film. Can you talk about a little bit, Eytan, about how the pandemic has maybe thrown a wrench or altered the plans for the film, and how you guys are coping in Israel? Because I'm curious, from here, from this point, Israel feels so far away, but we're connected by this pandemic, this global pandemic.
Yeah. So first of all, it was very frustrating to give birth to a film, now when we were chosen to be part of the Tribeca Film Festival competition, and they canceled 2 weeks before the festival because everyone realized what was going on. And in New York especially, it was like the worst period possible, the worst time possible. So that was canceled, as a real festival. And then the plans for the film's release, of course, have changed dramatically. And Niv and I were looking forward, so eager that both of us were, to go to New York together and see the film with an audience in a big cinema, and meet John Benjamin Hickey, who lives in New York, and celebrate the film together. And that, of course, did not happen. So so it was not a very good experience for us. But on the other hand, the film is traveling the world now in many film festivals. And people are seeing it, which is what's important. And eventually, hopefully, cinemas will come back, and the film has a wonderful North American distributor, and hopefully the film will be seen by people in theaters, and later on in one of the streamers. We're talking to them. So yes, and Niv, what can you say about how
I
this
say that I think we need to start thinking about what's gonna happen when the cinemas are gonna open. I think next week in Israel.
really there's talk. Ruben, Israel is a relatively interesting
Exactly.
situation that has a lot of good sides to it. Like we've all been vaccinated, which is
Wow.
We are all been vaccinated. Almost everyone. Like a lot of people got vaccinated.
yeah.
Wow.
And,
No, here's just frontline workers, healthcare workers, and 65 and older. We're at that stage right now. So we have a long way to go. I might not even get vaccinated until the summer. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And Niv is right. They are talking about the possibility of opening, theaters and cinemas and theaters very shortly. So our film was going to be one of the first films to be shown in Israeli theaters.
I think it needs to be the first, Eytan, because we need
You're
to
right.
have the opportunity that people are gonna rush into the cinemas and they're gonna watch the first movie they see. I'll go to the cinema and watch YouTube. I don't care, just to be in the cinema.
Yeah,
You
you're
guys
right.
are vaccinated, which means they can open. It's great. That's wonderful. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, now that I'm gonna start, keeping my eyes out to see how the film is released in Israel. I'm very curious to see how it was received, because I think that it has a lot of crossover appeal. I think in the earlier interview that you did, Eytan, you mentioned that there's films like Moonlight and Call Me by Your Name that have this crossover appeal. That's what I'm hoping for this film, because it's really lovely, and it really deserves to find a really big audience.
Thank you so much, Ruben.
Sure.
We hope you are right and that we find that audience.
Yeah, it's really a very special film. Lastly, I have to know from both of you guys, do you follow Michael's advice about folding the socks so they don't lose their elasticity?
Maybe Niv does.
Uh-oh.
No,
So I guess
be
you
sure
don't.
that I'm exactly like Tomer in folding socks matter, like the same. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. I mean, this has been wonderful. I mean, I could spend all day talking to you guys. I really can. I really could. So best of luck with everything. I'll be reviewing the film when it comes out commercially in the summer. So I might even do an interview about all this. So we'll see.
That's wonderful. And maybe Niv and me will compensate ourselves for Tribeca. We'll just get on a plane and fly to the States and come to Miami and all the other places that are going to be showing Sublet and
man, that would be awesome. That would be terrific. Anyway, thank you so very much. Thank you to the audience for contributing, for watching, and for support over the years, and to filmmakers like Eytan, my dear friend. So good to see you. Best of luck, Niv, for everything, and your amazing dog, who's beautiful. Just keep your chin up, and maybe we'll have a brighter tomorrow.
We will. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Wonderful.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.